Welcome to the Children's Services Council of Leon County. This is our second final trim public hearing. I'd like to call this meeting to order at this time. Let the record reflect the Children's Services Council of Leon County is convening its second public hearing under the Florida Truth in Millage Act at 5:18 p.m. on Tuesday, September 21, in the City of Tallahassee Commission Chambers. Ms. McPhail, would you please call the roll?
Paul Mitchell. Commissioner Cummings.
Here.
Dr. Glenn. Superintendent Hannah.
Here.
School Board Member Jones. Ms. McFadden.
Here.
Mr. O'Brien. Mr. Watts.
Here.
Vice Chair Connor.
Present.
Chair Sostrom.
Present.
You have a quorum present, Mr. Chair.
Very well. Next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Any amendments, changes, alterations, corrections, deletions, any discussion of the agenda? Seeing no takers, is there a motion to accept the agenda?
Mr. Chair, I move to accept the agenda.
Second.
Moved and second, moved by Commissioner Cummings, second by Superintendent Hannah. Any objection to the agenda as written? Seeing no objection, the agenda is adopted as written unanimously. Next item in the agenda, trim overview and public reading. The truth in millage or trim process engages taxpayers and the public in the process through which local taxing authorities determine the amount of ad valorem property taxes they're going to request to fund their next year's budgets. The public hearing is part of that process and is being held in compliance with Chapter 200 of the Florida statutes, which governs truth in millage. This trim public hearing is being held by the Children's Services Council of Leon County, also called CSC Leon. Because CSC Leon is seeking millage for the first time, there is no percentage increase in millage over the rolled back rate needed to fund the budget, and ad valorem tax revenues for the CSC will be increasing from the last fiscal year. The final millage rate CSC Leon is requesting is 0.375 mils. At this public hearing, it is in the intent of CSC Leon to adopt its final 2021-22 millage rate and budget. At this time, because the judge member is disqualified by statute from the vote on the millage rate, I'm going to turn the proceedings and the gavel over to Vice Chair Connor. Vice Chair Connor, whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you. All right, has there been any public comment cards submitted?
No, Madam Chair.
So no? Okay. No, ma'am. All right. The tentative millage rate approved by the council at the first trim public hearing on September 8th was 0.375 mils. Mr. Rowe, will you please review the proposed resolution regarding the approval of the final 2021-22 Children's Services Council of Leon County millage rate?
Yes, Madam Chair, you have before you for consideration resolution number 2021-04 entitled "A Resolution of the Children's Services Council of Leon County establishing the final millage rate for ad valorem tax revenue for fiscal year 2021-2022 at the rate of 0.3750 mils and providing an effective date." This is a short resolution approving the previously approved tentative millage rate of 0.375 mils. It's required by statute. Each taxing authority has to approve their millage by resolution. It describes that millage rate. It confirms that this is the final approved millage rate for the fiscal year forthcoming. Once it's adopted, it is, of course, a matter of our public records, and it will be forwarded. A copy is forwarded to the tax collector, property appraiser, and Florida Department of Revenue.
Okay. May I have a motion to approve the resolution number 2021-04? Okay, is there a second?
I second, Madam Co-Chair.
Okay. All right, we moved in by Ms. McFadden and second by Commissioner Cummings. Is there any discussion? All right. We have a motion on the table that has been seconded and for the Children's Services Council to approve its final 2021-22 millage rate of .375 mils as reflected in the resolution number 2021-04. Are there any objections to this motion? All right, there being none, let the record reflect that the motion passed unanimously. And I'll turn it back over to you, Judge.
Very well. Thank you so much, Vice Chair Connor.
Has to be unanimously with one abstention.
Say again?
With one abstention.
Oh, I need to say that.
Yes, so we need to reflect that I abstained from the vote based on the statutory disqualification. Thank you. All right. All right, so next matter for discussion on the agenda is our 2021 budget. First part of our discussion of the budget will be public comment. Do we have any speakers, Ms. McPhail?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Mr. Michael Davidson, if you'll approach the microphone and state your name for the record.
Thanks so much, Mr. Davidson. Whenever you're ready, sir. The floor is yours.
Mike Davidson, I live at 1257 Redfield Road here in Tallahassee. I've noticed that the budget does a fine job of laying out all the administrative expenses. Then you got $7,200,000-something left over. What are you going to do with that? There's no specificity as to what you're going to do with $7 million plus. What are you going to do with it? Don't tell us what are you going to do with that. The administrative expenses are there. I think they're probably reasonable, all things considered. But you got $7,200,000. What do you intend to do with it? You don't tell us. It's our money. Do we have a right to know? Now, I'm not sure what the overall objectives and aims of this council are, and I don't think you do either, because you're not telling us. If you know and you're not telling us, that's not fair. If you don't know, why don't you know what you're going to do with $7 million? All right? Now, I'd like to give you some interesting statistics about what I think you might want to consider when you start allocating these dollars to whatever your aims and objectives are. And I want to read to you these stats, and I'd like you to consider them and decide what the aims and objectives of this council really are if you're trying to lift children out of poverty, which is what I think you're supposedly, what you're telling us you want to do. 85% of prison inmates in the United States come from homes where the father is absent. 63% of youth suicides are from fatherless homes. 90% of all homeless and runaway children are from fatherless homes. 85% of all children who show behavior disorders come from fatherless homes. 80% of rapists with anger problems come from fatherless homes. 71% of all high school dropouts come from fatherless homes. 75% of all adolescent patients in chemical abuse centers come from fatherless homes. Do you get a picture here? Do you intend to address this matter? If all you're going to do is go around and hand out shoes and shirts and stuff like that to kids who may need them, you're not addressing the real cause of their poverty. That's typical of what happens in this country. We always address the results of poverty. We never get down to the root causes of poverty. And one of the root causes here you can see, homes that don't have fathers in them statistically are almost doomed to fail. Right? Do you intend to address that? If you don't intend to address it, all you're doing is enabling poverty to pass over to another generation of people, to another generation of children's services councils who will be just as ineffective as apparently the 150 organizations that are doing what they're supposed to do to help children are doing now and failing in. Because if they weren't failing, we wouldn't need you guys to be here. So what are you really going to do? Have you thought it through? What community services can you marshal to go out to the community and say, we have a problem here. We have families that don't have fathers. The family unit is broken down. What can you do to tell people, for instance, to go out to kids that are in 7th and 8th grade, which is typically where dropouts happen precipitously, and say, it's not cool to drop out to become a gangbanger and sell drugs to make a living. It's not cool to become pregnant when you're still a teenager. To marshal the resources of the community to impress upon people that if you want to succeed in life, you have to have an order to your life. And you're not going to have that order if you don't have a father in the home, productive, responsible, and bearing with his shoulders the responsibility of raising a family. Now, you haven't thought about these things apparently. If you haven't, I urge you to please do so. I mean, I am not against the council per se, but I am against the council that just says, we're going to just throw a lot of money without objectives at a problem we perceive, but we have no real solution for. Because all you're going to do then is what we've done historically in this country now. It's estimated we've spent $60 trillion since the 60s to eradicate poverty. Guess what? It's still here, otherwise you wouldn't be here. So I want you to please address these root causes of poverty and help get children really out of poverty and not just sustain them in poverty so they can be pass that poverty on to the next generation of children. Root causes are what you need to address. Results do not be addressed right away. Root causes do. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your thoughts and for being here today, sir. All right, any other public comment?
No, sir, Mr. Chair.
All right, very well. So we need the record to reflect that Treasurer Mitchell, Finance Chair Mitchell is present. And so because of the rain and some other issues, we were worried that people were having a hard time getting here, so we started. So I apologize for starting without you,
No,
Mr.
that's
Mitchell.
fine.
We voted on the other council members who are allowed to vote on it, voted on the millage. I don't know if you want maybe to move to reflect your vote on the final millage or not. I'll turn it back over to Chair Connor in a minute. Right now, we're going to work on the budget.
Thank
All right.
thank you, Mr. Chair. And Madam Chair, maybe I would like the record to reflect that I'm supportive of the compromise millage rate that was established several meetings ago of 0.375.
So may the records reflect. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Excellent. So we'll go back to the final budget, which is 2021-22. Your arrival is quite timely because you're the next on the agenda, Mr. Mitchell. And I'd ask Mr. Mitchell to provide a brief overview of the final Leon CSC 2021-22 budget. Mr. Mitchell, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Judge. One thing to recognize before I go into this is that any organization, as its first beginning, it's kind of challenging to come up with a budget, not knowing what the next year might hold, not knowing what needs may come before the council, and so part of the reason that I supported the 0.375 millage rate is an anticipation that over the years, we are going to need that money and use that money, and hopefully wisely. With that in mind, let me just give you a couple of quick overviews of the budget and give you an idea of what the 0.375 millage rate will yield. First of all, based on the property rolls, it is estimated to be about $7.3 million that will be raised from the collection of the 0.375 mils. If the council voted to establish a reserve, actually at my recommendation, and I appreciate that, of 5%, that is a total of $367,572. Leaving a total operating budget of $7.2 million. Some of the major expenses that we know to anticipate is a needs assessment. We guesstimated, and it's truly just a guess, of somewhere between $250,000 and $300,000. It's in the budget as $250,000. On numerous occasions, I've said that I'm hoping that vendors will come forward with lower prices, but still meeting the needs of a true needs assessment that needs to be done. The county, as you guys remember, provided us a loan with a set interest rate that was fairly low and very competitive. And we didn't use all of that money, but there is, of the $400,000 they loaned us, but there is a portion that we will be paying back in this year's budget. There is a tax collector's fee. Not something I'm terribly supportive of, but this is not the year to make this argument. But the tax collector may charge up to 3% to collect the $7.3 million on our behalf. And they are collecting the full 3%, which is $220,000. So clearly, there must be a couple positions that they need to fund to collect our money. Anyhow, $220,000 is going to the tax collector. There is a budgeted amount for technology and an enterprise software system that will not just track the budget and how we're spending the dollars, but have an accountability component built into it. This is a back-of-the-napkin guess, again, hoping it will be lower, but that is budgeted for $150,000. Bringing all of those total major expenses I mentioned to a little over $1 million, $1,020,000. After you remove all of the major expenses, the 5% reserve fund, we have left to be spent, if we so choose, about $5.8 million on community investment grants directly to the community to fund programs. And Mr. Chair, that's the budget and overview, and I'm happy to answer any questions of the council members.
Thank you so much, Treasurer Mitchell. Any questions, comments, or discussion of the budget? Mr. Rowe, I'd ask you now to please review the proposed resolution regarding the approval of the final 2021-22 Children's Services Council of Leon County.
Questions?
I'm sorry, Mr. Jones, I ran roughshod over you. My apologies.
No problem. I wanted to defer since I was late in case anyone else had a question, but if no one else does, it's not my intention to quibble, but I do recall when we were talking about the CEO's salary, I remember making a pointed comment that the superintendent of schools, who manages 51 school sites, 5,000 faculty, makes a base salary of $120,000, and I thought that was where we landed.
So, yeah, so the in this budget, one, it's just an estimate. Two, we don't specify a dollar amount on the executive director. I happen to share your views on the comments you've made, but in the budget itself, we budgeted, again, not a precise number. I mean, we put down a precise number. I can't remember what it was for the executive director. But Mr. Jones, I definitely remember your comment. And when it comes to hiring the executive director, a compensation package will be offered at that point. And so we can probably do this as a board on that issue alone, but it's not, there's not a set amount.
It's not my intention to quibble. Right over $5,000, but I did know that when we had this discussion earlier, I was under the impression that depending upon what a person made previously, we may not even have to max out at $120,000. If they were formerly making 90, then 110 or 105 would be but I thought we set 120 in comparison to what we already pay the CEO of an entire school district. We thought that I thought my comment was clear that it would be untoward to provide a compensation, a level of remuneration greater than what we already pay the CEO of a school district. So I just want, and I see 125 here, and I understand that that is the salary and then plus benefits, but I see here 125, and I just wanted to know, when did we, was there the conversation that we had about it beyond the conversations that I was included?
So, Mr. Jones, before the discussion that you are, I think, correct in reflecting on, the board voted to advertise the position at a salary range of $90,000 to $125,000, and that was after some discussion. It may have been when Ms. Triplin was still on the board. I can't remember when we made that decision as a board. But we did. We made the decision and voted on it. Again, there is a range of 90 to 125. I candidly don't care what they're making now. I agree with you. I am looking at a superintendent who, forget about the salary he makes and the amount of the budget he manages. The task is considerable of running a school district, especially during these times. So I'll be sensitive of that when we actually make an offer to the would-be director. But what's reflected in the budget is really the top line, like the most you can expect. Again, it's the first-year budget. Once we've hired a director, and let's say they're making $100,000 a year, when you look at the budget this time next year, it will say $100,000, and you can take that one to the bank.
If I can I interject, and I appreciate your remarks, Mr. Jones, I honestly do. My salary is set in statute. It's adjusted by the legislature on a per capita basis. So it's like the governor. I mean, the governor, I think we paid the president $250,000 of the United States. No one has more. So I appreciate the comments, but at the end of the day, I think we need to, if don't nickel and dime hiring the best person, the right person for the position. I don't control the city manager salary and the county administrator salaries, which are significantly more. But again, mine's set in statute. So although I'm somewhat embarrassed by the comments, I appreciate the comments, but I don't want it to hold us up at the end of the day when it comes to hiring the right person.
Thanks so much, Superintendent Hannah. Mr. Jones, I want to make sure that you had concluded. Any other comments?
I just wanted, I mean, I understand Ms. Strickland predates me. The conversation that I referenced occurred about this salary since I've been on the board. And I just don't want to ever be made to feel that anything that we discuss or that I've said is not somehow then ultimately captured in the documents, the minutes, and the presentations that we put forward. And I was very, very clear because we kept going back and forth. We had gone as high as 180, right? And when I made the comparison to the superintendent that ended all discussion, everybody's like, wow, and that's where we ended. So I say I don't want to quibble and I don't want to waste any more of our time about the $5 grand, but I know that we had come to that conclusion, and that's the only reason I wanted to bring it up.
Mr. Jones, if just to conclude this, there's no magic to the amount of $125,000, much like the needs assessment. These are round numbers, and again, we advertised the position from 90 to 125, and that was based on, I don't know who made the motion and seconded it, but it was a vote, I know, by the board. So that's why we used the number 125.
I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
I'm hoping it will be lower.
Thank you so much, Treasurer Mitchell. Treasurer, you are plainly dedicated to fiscal responsibility, and I appreciate that very much. We need it. Any other comments on the budget?
Well, I would say to Mr. Mitchell's point, I don't want to get into it, but it is interesting that this organization pays the tax collector nearly $250,000 to collect on our behalf. That is quite shocking. And I just sent an email or a text message to my director of finance because we don't.
You don't.
Right, we don't.
You're exempt.
Yeah. So I'm like, please tell me we're not, because I've missed it. If we have, I'm not doing a very good job of managing our money because I've never seen it. So that was somewhat surprising to me as well.
Thank you so much, Superintendent Hannah. Any other discussions of the budget?
Just a point of information to respond to Mr. Davidson's comments that he made earlier. about the amount that we have in the program and not a plan. I think that, just to reiterate, we're waiting for the needs assessment to come back, which will give us the roadmap, and we will base it on that. So I don't know that that was said in the budgeting, but I thought it was important to note.
Ms. McFadden, could you please repeat and speak into the microphone? Members of the audience are unable to hear.
Okay, I said I wanted to just quickly respond to Mr. Davidson's point about the amount in the program budget, and that we have a needs assessment that is going to be the roadmap to help us guide how to spend that $5 million. And I just thought it should be said publicly, since he made the comment earlier and probably wanted to hear a response to it.
Very good. Thank you so much. Any other comments on the budget, discussion of the budget from the council members? So now, Mr. Jones, and we need to make sure we amend the minutes to reflect Mr. Jones and Mr. O'Brien are present. I'm very sorry that we started without you guys being here, but we had,
I apologize for being late.
well, in this weather, it's hard to get here, so a rock and hard place, you know. Mr. Rowe, will you please review the proposed resolution regarding approval of the final 2021-22 Children's Services Council of Leon County budget?
Mr. Chair, the council has before it for consideration resolution number 2021-05, entitled "A Resolution of the Children's Services Council of Leon County adopting the final budget for fiscal year 2021-2022 and providing an effective date." This resolution is likewise very short. It approves the budget as described at some length by Councilmember Mitchell. The budget is attached to the resolution as an appendix. Adoption of the resolution will formalize council's approval of the budget for the forthcoming fiscal year, and adoption of the resolution concludes the public hearing process for consideration of the millage and the budget for such fiscal year.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move Resolution 2021-05, which is our budget.
Thank you, Treasurer Mitchell. There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. O'Brien moves and seconds. Any discussion of the motion? Seeing no discussion of the motion, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, the motion carries unanimously. This is the final trim public hearing. Staff will submit the two resolutions that have just been approved by the council to the property appraiser, tax collector, and Department of Revenue within 3 days, and the 2021-22 trim process will be concluded.
Judge?
Yes, sir. Mr. O'Brien.
May make a request. I would like to ask Vice Chair Connor to let the record reflect that I support Resolution 2021-04, approving a 0.375 millage rate for the council, since I wasn't present earlier. And that is for the
Chair
record.
comment. I yield the gavel to you.
Okay, thank you. And we also will extend that to you, Mr. Jones.
Yes.
Okay, let the records reflect. Thank you.
Outstanding. All right. Any other council member comments? Seeing no takers, we are adjourned. Thank you, folks.
That was quick.
Thank you.